Ambassador Zeth Kalar stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his tall gray form perfectly still as he waited for his next assignment. His dark eyes held the calm confidence of someone who had done this job many times before. For over 300 years, he had served as the Council's most trusted first contact specialist. 212 successful missions, not a single failure. The holographic display flickered to life in front of him, showing a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The world looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over vast oceans and brown landmasses. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, just another routine assignment. Selthry announced Council Leader Vorthan, her voice echoing through the chamber. The third planet in what the natives call the solar system. Species there calls themselves humans. Zeth Kalar nodded slowly. He had read the preliminary reports during his journey to the council chambers. The humans had recently achieved faster-than-light communication, intercepting some of the council's basic transmissions. This was always the trigger point. When a species could detect council communications, it meant they were ready for first contact. The intelligence reports suggest a standard emerging civilization, continued Vorthan. They have unified under a single planetary government within the last 50 years. Their technology shows normal progression patterns. They have developed nuclear energy, basic space travel, and digital communications. All very typical. Zeth Kalar's assistant, a small blue creature named Plix, handed him a datapad containing the full mission briefing. The ambassador scanned through the information quickly. Everything looked normal. Humans had a population of approximately 8 billion individuals. They had recently ended their major planetary conflicts and established a world government. Their leaders appeared rational and organized. What is their social structure like? Zeth Kalar asked, though he already suspected the answer. Most species followed similar patterns. Hierarchical, as expected, replied Vorthan. They have a central governing body that makes decisions for the entire planet. Their leader is called a president, similar to the chancellor system we see. In most emerging civilizations, they appear to have moved beyond tribal conflicts and regional disputes. This was exactly what Zeth Kalar expected to hear. In his experience, species that achieved FTL communication had already solved their major internal problems. War, poverty, and political division were obstacles that prevented technological advancement.
Oh.
No species could reach the stars while still fighting among themselves. Their military capabilities? He asked, following standard protocol. Minimal, Vorthan answered. They possess nuclear weapons, but only for planetary defense purposes. The weapons appear to be under strict control of their unified government. Intelligence suggests they have not used these weapons in warfare for over 80 years. Zeth Kalar felt relieved. Nuclear weapons were always a concern during first contact, but humans seem to have learned to control them responsibly. This was another good sign. Species that could manage dangerous technology without destroying themselves were usually ready for council membership. What about their culture? He asked. Standard development patterns, said Plix, reading from another datapad. They have art, music, literature, and scientific research. Their entertainment appears focused on educational content and peaceful activities. They seem to value cooperation and harmony as most civilized species do. Perfect, Zeth Kalar had seen this pattern dozens of times. Humans would be just like the Delthans, or the Morvik, or the Zentari. Once a species unified and eliminated internal conflict, they all developed similar peaceful cultures. It was one of the great constants. Of the galaxy? My orders? He asked, though he already knew what they would be. Standard First Contact Protocol 7, announced Vorthan. Approach their capital city, request a meeting with their planetary leader, assess their readiness for council membership, guide them through the standard integration process. We expect this mission to take no more than 2 weeks. Zeth Kalar bowed formally. 2 weeks seemed generous. Most first contact missions took only a few days once the initial meeting was arranged. Civilized species were usually eager to join the galactic community. They understood the benefits of trade, shared knowledge, and mutual protection. The Council has high hopes for this species, added Vorthan. The rapid technological development, suggests they may become valuable members. Their planet is rich in resources, and their population size indicates good organizational skills. As Zeth Kohler prepared to leave, he felt the familiar sense of purpose that came with each new mission. First contact was important work. It brought new civilizations into the peaceful order of the Galactic Council. It ended isolation and fear. It created friends instead of potential enemies. His ship. The diplomatic vessel Harmony was already prepared for the journey. The crew of 12 included specialists in xenobiology, linguistics, and cultural analysis. They would help him understand any unique aspects of human civilization. Though he doubted there would be many surprises, the journey to Sol 3 took 18 days through hyperspace. During the trip, Zeth Kohler studied every piece of available information about humans. Their language seemed straightforward, with only a few major variations across their planet. Their technology was developing rapidly but remained within normal parameters. Their social structure appeared stable and rational. Everything pointed to a textbook. First contact mission. As his ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, Zeth Kohler felt confident and prepared. It handled far more challenging assignments than this. The Keylocks had been warriors who needed careful persuasion to join the council. The Vith were hive-minded and required special communication protocols. The humans seemed simple by comparison. His ship's sensors immediately began scanning the inner system, looking for the capital city where he would request his first meeting with the human leader. The sensors found something that made him pause. There were thousands of artificial satellites orbiting the planet. Hundreds of space stations, multiple moon bases. This level of space infrastructure was unusual for a species so new to space travel. But perhaps humans were simply more ambitious than most emerging civilizations. Then his communications officer called out from her station. "Ambassador, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the planet, from their government." Zeth Kohler asked, "No, sir, from hundreds of different sources, different languages, different transmission methods, different everything." Zeth Kohler frowned. This was unusual. Most unified planets had centralized communications. Why would humans need hundreds of different transmission sources? Are they trying to contact us? He asked. No, sir. They appear to be talking to each other. The ambassador felt the first small twist of confusion in his stomach. Something was not matching the intelligence reports. But he pushed the feeling aside. There would be logical explanations. There always were. "Take us to their capital city," he ordered. "Time to meet the human leader and begin standard protocols." I had no idea that nothing about this mission would be standard. Zeth Kohler's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere toward what his sensors identified as the largest city in the region. The coordinates matched the intelligence reports for the human capital. Everything should have been simple from here. Land near the government buildings. Request a meeting with the planetary leader. Begin standard first contact procedures. But as his ship touched down on the designated landing area, Zeth Kohler noticed something strange. Dozens of different flags flew from buildings around the landing site. This was odd. Unified planets typically had one flag, one symbol representing their single government. Within minutes of landing, ground vehicles surrounded his ship. They were not all the same design or color. Some were military vehicles, others appeared civilian. The humans who emerged wore different uniforms and carried different weapons. Zeth Kohler had never seen such a variety in a planetary defense force. When the airlock opened, he was greeted by a middle-aged human male with graying hair and a confident smile. The man wore a dark suit rather than military uniform, which seemed appropriate for a planetary leader. "Welcome to Earth," the human said in clear, understandable language. "I'm President Jake Morrison. We're honored by your visit." Zeth Kohler felt relieved. Finally something matched expectations. He stepped down from his ship and performed the standard greeting gesture of his people, placing both hands over his heart. "Greetings, President Morrison. I am Ambassador Zeth Kohler of the Galactic Council. I come seeking audience with the leader of your world to discuss your species' entry into the galactic community." President Morrison's smile faltered slightly. "The leader of our world? Well, that's complicated." "Not complicated. Zethkalar had never heard a planetary leader describe their authority as complicated. "I do not understand. Are you not the human leader?" "I'm the leader of the United States of America," Morrison explained. "That's one country on Earth, but there are 195 other countries, each with their own leaders." The words hit Zethkalar like a physical blow. 196 separate governments? On a single planet? This was impossible. No species could achieve space travel while maintaining such political division. "Surely you mean administrative region," Zethkalar said, hoping he had misunderstood. "Subdivisions of your planetary government?" Morrison shook his head. "No, separate sovereign nations. Independent countries with their own laws, militaries, and governments. We have the United Nations, where we try to work together, but each country makes its own decisions." Dr. Lisa Grant, Earth's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a patient expression. "Ambassador, perhaps we should arrange a global conference call. You can meet leaders from around the world and see how our system works." Zethkalar agreed, though his mind was reeling. A global conference call implied these separate governments actually communicated with each other regularly. This was either very good or very bad. An hour later, Zethkalar found himself sitting in a conference room, staring at a large screen divided into dozens of smaller screens. Each screen showed a different human in a different location, speaking different languages that were somehow being translated in real time. "Allow me to introduce some of our world leaders," Dr. Grant said. "This is Prime Minister Helen Burke of the United Kingdom." A stern-looking woman with short gray hair nodded. At the screen, "Ambassador, welcome to Earth. I hope you'll find our planet interesting." "This is Chancellor Klaus Weber of Germany," Dr. Grant continued. A heavy-set man with a thick accent leaned forward. "We are very excited to learn about your technology. Ambassador, perhaps we can discuss trade agreements." Zethkalar watched in growing horror as more leaders appeared on screen. President Chen Wei of China spoke about economic cooperation. Prime Minister Raj Patel of India discussed space exploration. President Maria Santos of Brazil mentioned environmental concerns. Each leader seemed to have different priorities, different concerns, different agendas. Then something happened that made Zethkalar's blood run cold. The leaders began disagreeing with each other. "The trade agreements must be fair to all nations," said Chancellor Weber. "Fair according to whom?" replied Prime Minister Burke. "Each country has different needs and capabilities. We cannot allow any single nation to control access to alien technology," added President Chen Wei. "No one is suggesting that," President Morrison interjected. "But we need to establish protocols." The argument escalated, voices rose, leaders interrupted each other. President Santos banged her hand on her desk. Prime Minister Patel shook his head in frustration. Chancellor Weber's face turned red with anger. Zethkalar had never seen anything like this in his 300 years of first contact missions. Civilized leaders did not argue in front of foreign ambassadors. They presented a united front. They spoke with one voice. "Perhaps we should take a break," Dr. Grant suggested, clearly embarrassed by the display. But the argument continued. Leaders began switching to their native languages, even though translation was available. Some disconnected their video feeds entirely. Others continued arguing with empty screens. "This is normal?" Zethkalar asked Dr. Grant quietly. "Unfortunately, yes," she replied. "Democracy can be messy. It's different viewpoints, competing interests, lots of debate. But how do you make decisions? How do you govern your planet?" We argue. We negotiate. We compromise. And eventually we reach agreements that most people can accept, Dr. Grant explained. "It takes time, but it usually works." Zethkalar felt dizzy. His species, the Vex, had eliminated political disagreement 10,000 years ago. The Council had never encountered a spacefaring civilization that still practiced this kind of chaos. "Dr. Grant," he said slowly, "what happens when your leaders cannot reach agreement? Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes individual countries act on their own. Sometimes we have conflicts." Conflicts, arguments, trade disputes, diplomatic tensions, occasionally military conflicts, though we try to avoid those. Military conflicts. between different parts of the same species, on the same planet, possessing space technology and nuclear weapons. General Pete Collins, who had been quietly observing the conference, stepped forward. "Ambassador, don't worry too much about our political discussions. We may argue a lot, but we're all humans. We'll figure it out." General Colin Zeth-Kolar said carefully, "What would happen if your nations could not resolve their differences?" The general shrugged. "Worst case scenario? War, I suppose? We've got enough nuclear weapons to end civilization several times over, so everyone usually stays reasonable." The words hit Zeth-Kolar like ice water. Nuclear weapons. Enough to end civilization multiple times. Controlled by nearly 200 different governments who regularly argued with each other, his vision blurred. His breathing became rapid and shallow. For the first time in centuries, Ambassador Zeth-Kolar experienced what humans would recognize as a panic attack. "Are you all right?" Dr. Grant asked, reaching toward him. "I need to return to my ship." Zeth-Kolar managed to say, "I need to reconsider my approach." As he stumbled toward the exit, he heard General Collins say to President Morrison, "Think we overwhelmed him a bit?" "Maybe we should have started with just the UN Security Council," Morrison replied. Zeth-Kolar barely made it back to his ship before collapsing into his command chair. His crew rushed to assist him, but he waved them away. "Sir," his communications officer asked, "shall I send a preliminary report to the council?" "Not yet," Zeth-Kolar whispered. "I need to understand what we're dealing with first. Are the humans? We're nothing like the intelligence reports. We're nothing like any species in council records. We're impossible, and they had nuclear weapons." 3 days had passed since the disastrous first meeting, and Zeth-Kolar still could not understand what he had witnessed. He sat in his ship reviewing the data, trying to make sense of humans and their impossible civilization. His crew watched him with growing concern as he muttered to himself and stared at reports that contradicted everything he knew about intelligent species. Dr. Lisa Grant arrived at his ship early in the morning with a new proposal. She brought with her a small team of humans who specialized in studying their own species. Professor Rick Johnson was a historian who knew about human development over thousands of years. Dr. Amy Foster was an anthropologist who studied different human cultures around the world. "Ambassador," Dr. Grant said gently, "we understand that our political system might seem strange to you. Perhaps if you saw more of how humans actually live and work together, it would make more sense." Zeth-Kolar looked up from his datapad. His dark eyes were tired and confused. "Dr. Grant, your species should not exist. According to every model we have of intelligent development, humans should have either achieved perfect unity or destroyed themselves long ago." "Maybe our models are different from yours," she replied. "Would you like to see some examples of human cooperation?" Against his better judgment, Zeth-Kolar agreed. He needed to understand these creatures before he could write any kind of report. To the council, their first stop was a large medical facility in the city. Dr. Kate Miller, chief surgeon, greeted them at the entrance. She was a tall woman with steady hands and a calm voice that spoke of years saving lives. "This is our trauma center," she explained as they walked through the building. "We treat anyone who needs help, regardless of where they come from or whether they can pay." Zeth-Kolar watched human medical workers moving quickly between patients. Some of the injured people were clearly from different countries, speaking different languages. Some wore expensive clothes while others appeared poor. Yet, all received the same level of care. "Why do you help strangers?" he asked Dr. Miller. She looked puzzled by the question. "'Cause they need help. That's what we do. But they are not from your family group. They provide no benefit to your genetic line. Some may even be from nations that compete with yours." Dr. Miller replied, "They're human beings. They're hurt. We fix hurt people. It's really that simple." This was impossible. In all of Zeth-Kolar's experience, species only showed such altruism toward family members or during species-wide emergencies. The casual way humans helped unrelated individuals violated basic principles of evolutionary behavior. Their next stop was even more confusing. Captain Tony Rodriguez was a fire department commander who showed them around his station. He was a stocky man with burn scars on his arms and smoke damage in his voice. Last week we had a big apartment fire, he told them. Saved 23 people, including a family from China who were visiting the city. You risked your life for visitors from another nation? Zethkalar asked. Captain Rodriguez shrugged. Fire doesn't care what country you're from. People needed help. So we helped them. But you could have died. What benefit did you gain? The benefit of knowing those 23 people went home to their families, the captain replied. That's enough. Zethkalar felt another wave of confusion. Behavior made no evolutionary sense. Humans regularly risked themselves for non-relatives, with no expectation of reward or genetic benefit, at a research laboratory. They met Dr. Ben Carter, a scientist working on medical treatments for diseases that affected people in poor countries. His work was funded by donations from wealthy humans who would never benefit from the treatments. Why do your wealthy citizens pay for research that helps people in other nations? Zethkalar asked. 'Cause suffering is suffering, Dr. Carter replied. If we can reduce it, we should. Doesn't matter where it happens. The ambassador's confusion deepened. Every species in the council looked after their own interests first. Cooperation happened when it provided mutual benefit. But humans seemed to help others simply because they could help. The breaking point came at a school where teacher Mary Collins showed him children from dozens of different backgrounds learning together. The classroom contained kids with different skin colors, speaking different languages at home from families that followed different religions and customs. How do you prevent conflict between such different groups? Zethkalar asked. Mostly we don't have to prevent it, Mary replied. The kids are pretty good at getting along. As if to prove her wrong, a fight broke out between two boys near the back of the classroom. Jake Wilson, a blond boy with freckles, had taken a toy from Carlos Mendez, a dark-haired boy who spoke Spanish at home. Zethkalar watched carefully, expecting to see the kind of tribal conflict that had destroyed so many species. This was how wars started. Different groups competing for resources, unable to resolve disputes peacefully. But what happened next shocked him to his core. Mary Collins walked over to the boys and knelt down between them. What's the problem here? He took my toy, Carlos said, pointing at Jake. I just wanted to see it, Jake replied. I was going to give it back. Jake, when you want to see something that belongs to someone else, what should you do? Ask first. Jake said quietly. And Carlos, what should you do when someone asks nicely to see your toy? Share, Carlos replied. So what happens now? Sorry, I took your toy without asking. Carlos smiled. It's okay. You want to play with it together? Yeah. Within seconds, the two boys were sitting on the floor playing together. The conflict completely forgotten. Zethkalar stared in amazement. That's it? The conflict is resolved? That's it, Mary confirmed. Kids fight sometimes, but they get over it quickly. They don't hold grudges like adults do. But they are from different ethnic groups, different languages, different cultures. So, they're also both 8 years old, and they like the same games. They have more in common than they have differences. The ambassador felt his worldview cracking apart. Humans could resolve conflicts in minutes without elaborate rituals, genetic, programming, or authority intervention. They simply talked, apologized, and moved on. That evening, back in his ship, Zethkalar tried to make sense of what he had seen. His species required months of careful mediation to resolve even minor disputes. Most council species had eliminated conflict through genetic modification or social conditioning, but humans seemed to have developed something else entirely. They fought, they forgave, they helped strangers, shared resources across tribal lines, and they did it all naturally, without thinking about it. His communications officer entered the command chamber. Sir, the council is requesting a preliminary report. Tell them I need more time, Zethkalar replied. How much more time, sir? The ambassador looked out at the lights of the human city below. Millions of individuals from hundreds of different backgrounds, somehow living and working together despite maintaining their differences. I don't know, he said quietly. I'm not sure I understand these creatures at all. After a week of studying human cooperation and altruism, Dr. Grant thought she understood what was confusing Ambassador Zeth Kalar. He seemed to think humans were either completely peaceful or completely violent. She decided to show him something that might help him understand the complexity of human nature. "Ambassador," she said as she entered his ship, "I think you need to see how humans relax and enjoy themselves. Maybe understanding our entertainment will help you understand our culture better." Zeth Kalar looked up from his reports with tired eyes. Nothing about humans made sense to him, but he was willing to try anything that might provide answers. Dr. Grant led him to a movie theater in the city. She had chosen what she thought was a safe introduction to human entertainment, a popular action movie that had been playing for several weeks. Nothing too violent or strange, just good fun. The movie was directed by Steve Parker, known for making exciting but family-friendly films. The story followed a human hero who had to save his city from criminals who wanted to destroy it. Simple plot, clear good guys and bad guys. Happy ending guaranteed. But as Zeth Kalar watched the movie, his confusion grew into horror. The human hero jumped from exploding buildings, fought dozens of enemies at once, and survived injuries that should have been fatal. The audience cheered when he defeated the villains with creative violence. They laughed when he made jokes while people were shooting at him. They clapped when he won an impossible victory against overwhelming odds. "This is a historical record," Zeth Kalar whispered to Dr. Grant. "No, it's fiction. Made-up entertainment." The ambassador stared at her. "Fiction? Yes. The actors are pretending. None of this really happened. It's just a story." Zeth Kalar felt sick. Humans created imaginary conflicts for enjoyment. They invented problems that did not exist, then cheered when fictional people solved them through violence and determination. What kind of species found entertainment in simulated danger? "Why do you watch this?" he asked. "'Cause it's fun," replied a teenager sitting nearby. "The good guy wins, the bad guys lose. Everybody gets excited. It's a good time." After the movie ended, Dr. Grant noticed that Zeth Kalar looked disturbed rather than entertained. She decided to try something different. Maybe he would prefer human comedy. The comedy club was packed with humans laughing at a performer named Jerry Stone. The comedian told jokes about daily life, relationships, and current events. The audience loved him. "My wife asked me what I'd do if aliens invaded Earth," Jerry said into his microphone. "I told her I'd probably ask them if they had jobs available. The pay here stinks." The audience roared with laughter. Zeth Kalar did not understand why discussing alien invasion was funny. "Scientists say nuclear war could end civilization," Jerry continued. "Great, maybe then I could finally get a parking space downtown." More laughter. Zeth Kalar felt cold. These humans were joking about the destruction of their own species. Found humor in existential threats. Global warming, nuclear weapons, asteroid impacts, Jerry went on. "With all the ways we could die, I'm surprised anyone gets life insurance. What are the odds?" The audience was in hysterics. People were wiping tears from their eyes, slapping their knees, and applauding wildly. Zeth Kalar leaned over to Dr. Grant. "He is making jokes about your species' potential extinction." "Yes," she replied, still chuckling. "It's called dark humor. We laugh about scary things to make them less frightening. You find your own destruction amusing?" "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds weird. But yeah, sometimes, if you can't laugh at the scary stuff, it would drive you crazy." This was beyond Zeth Kalar's comprehension. No species in council records found humor in existential threats. Fear of extinction was the most basic survival instinct. Yet humans turned it into entertainment. Dr. Grant's next idea was even worse. She took him to meet Danny Clark, a 16-year-old human who was considered an expert at something called video games. "Check this out," Danny said, starting up a game on his computer. "This is called Civilization Builder. You get to create entire societies, guide them through history, and see if they survive." Zeth Kalar watched as Danny created a virtual world populated by millions of digital beings. The boy built cities, developed technologies, created armies, and guided his civilization through wars and disasters. "What happens if your civilization fails?" Zeth Kalar asked. "You start over," Danny replied. "Sometimes I play the same scenario dozens of times, trying different strategies. You casually destroy entire civilizations. They're not real. It's just a game. Watch this. Danny launched nuclear weapons at his own cities, wiping out millions of digital citizens in seconds. Then he laughed and started a new game. Cool explosion. Effects, right? The new version has even better graphics when cities get destroyed. Zethkalar gripped the edge of the desk to keep from falling over. This young human was casually ending civilizations for entertainment. The rise and fall of entire societies was a game to him. "Don't you feel anything for those digital beings?" the ambassador asked. "They're just pixels on a screen," Danny said. "It's not like they're actually alive." But to Zethkalar, who came from a species that valued every individual life, the casual treatment of even artificial civilizations was deeply disturbing. The final breaking point came when Dr. Grant showed him a horror movie festival. She thought it might help him understand human psychology to see how they dealt with fear. The movie was directed by Alex Turner. It's famous for creating frightening but artistic films. The story involved humans being hunted by dangerous monsters. In a remote location, as the movie played, Zethkalar watched humans in the audience pay money to be terrified. They screamed when characters were in danger. They covered their eyes during scary scenes. They jumped when monsters appeared suddenly, and then they asked for more. "That was awesome," said a young woman as they left the theater. "I can't wait for the sequel." "The part where the monster jumped out of the closet was perfect," agreed her friend. "I nearly had a heart attack." They were discussing their fear as if it had been a positive experience. Dr. Grant Zethkalar said slowly, "Humans voluntarily experience terror for pleasure? Some humans enjoy being scared in safe situations," she explained. "It's exciting. Gets the blood pumping. You pay money to be frightened?" "Sure, roller coasters, haunted houses, horror movies, extreme sports. Lots of humans like controlled danger." Zethkalar stared at the crowd of humans leaving the theater. They looked happy, excited, energized by their fear. Some were already talking about which scary movie to see next. This was the moment his sanity finally cracked. Humans created fictional conflicts for entertainment. They joked about their own extinction. They casually destroyed virtual civilizations. They paid money to experience terror, everything that should terrify a rational species. Humans turned into fun. "I need to return to my ship," Zethkalar said quietly. "Are you all right?" Dr. Grant asked. "No," he replied honestly. "I do not think I will ever be all right again." As he walked back to his ship, Zethkalar realized he was no longer studying an alien species. He was documenting something that should not exist, something that broke every rule of intelligent development, something that frightened him more than any horror movie ever could. Ambassador Zethkalar sat in his command chair for 3 days without moving. His crew brought him food and water, but he barely touched them. He stared at the walls of his ship, trying to process everything he had learned about humans. His mind felt broken, like a computer trying to run software that did not exist. On the 4th day, his communications officer Nick Bailey approached him carefully. Nick was a young human who had volunteered to help with technical support during the first contact mission. He was friendly and eager to help, completely unaware of the chaos building inside the ambassador's mind. "Sir," Nick said gently, "the Galactic Council is demanding a full report. They say you've been on Earth for 3 weeks without sending any official communications." Zethkalar looked at the human with exhausted eyes. 3 weeks. It felt like 3 years or 3 lifetimes. "Very well," he said slowly. "Establish a connection to the council chambers. Full assembly." Nick worked at the communications console, setting up the quantum link to the council headquarters. Within minutes, the holographic display showed the grand chamber where representatives from hundreds of species waited to hear about Earth's first contact. Council leader Vorthan appeared on screen, her expression showing mild concern. "Ambassador Zethkalar, we have been waiting for your report. How did the first contact proceed? Are the humans ready for council membership?" Zethkalar stood up slowly, looking at the assembled representatives of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Species that had achieved perfect peace, eliminated conflict, and created orderly societies. Species that made sense. Honored Council, he began, his voice steady but hollow. I must report that everything we believed about intelligent species development is wrong. A murmur of confusion swept through the chamber. Worthen frowned. Explain yourself, Ambassador. The humans, Zethkalar continued, are not what our intelligence reports suggested. They are not a unified planet. They have 196 separate governments that regularly argue with each other. They maintain enough nuclear weapons to destroy their civilization multiple times over. These weapons are controlled by dozens of different nations that compete for resources and power. Ambassador Yathara of the Centered Worlds leaned forward. That is impossible. No species can achieve space travel while maintaining such division. That is what I believed, Zethkalar replied. But I was wrong. Humans have not only achieved space travel, they thrive in chaos. They argue constantly, yet somehow cooperate. They maintain separate armies, yet avoid destroying themselves. They compete economically, yet share knowledge freely across national boundaries. The council members looked at each other with growing concern. This did not match any known patterns of civilization development. Furthermore, Zethkalar continued, his voice becoming strained, humans display impossible behavioral patterns. They regularly risk their lives for strangers with no genetic relationship or personal benefit. They spend their own resources to help people in distant nations they will never meet. They forgive enemies and work together with former opponents as if conflict had never occurred. Dr. Sarah Kim, the council's chief xenopsychologist, spoke up. Ambassadors, such behavior would indicate severe psychological disorders. Are you certain you observed this correctly? I witnessed a human medical worker treat patients from hostile nations with the same care as her own citizens. I saw a human rescue worker risk death to save visitors from foreign countries. I watched human children from completely different ethnic groups resolve conflicts in minutes and return to playing together. The chamber fell silent. These behaviors contradicted basic evolutionary principles, but Zethkalar was not finished. His voice began to shake as he continued. The humans create fictional conflicts for entertainment. They watch stories of violence and danger for pleasure. They make jokes about their own potential extinction. They voluntarily experience terror and call it fun. They create virtual worlds populated by billions of digital beings, then casually destroy entire civilizations and start over for amusement. Council leader Vorthen stood up. Ambassador, I think you need immediate medical attention. What you are describing is impossible. I thought so too, Zethkalar replied, but I have proof. He nodded to Nick Bailey, who began transmitting raw human data feeds to the council chambers. News broadcasts showing political arguments. Social media posts with humans debating and fighting over trivial issues. Entertainment media showing fictional violence and horror. Video games where players destroyed worlds for fun. The council members watched in stunned silence as the data stream showed humans simultaneously conducting advanced scientific research while creating increasingly realistic simulations of war and destruction. They saw humans teaching their children about peace while producing entertainment focused on conflict and violence. Dr. Kim studied the data with growing alarm. This is psychologically impossible. These beings should have either achieved perfect unity or destroyed themselves millennia ago. They cannot exist in this state. Yet they do, Zethkalar said. They not only exist, they prosper. Their technology advances rapidly. Their population grows. Civilization expands into space. They accomplish all of this while maintaining complete internal contradiction. Ambassador Quelith of the Ancient Circle spoke for the first time. What do you recommend, Ambassador? Zethkalar looked directly into the camera, his dark eyes reflecting deep fear and confusion. I recommend we leave them alone, he said quietly. These humans are simultaneously the most dangerous and most noble species I have ever encountered. They should not exist according to every model we have of intelligent development, yet they thrive. They create problems that do not exist, solve problems that seem impossible, and find joy in circumstances that would break any civilized mind. He paused, taking a shaky breath. They wage wars for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. They sacrifice themselves for ideas rather than genetic survival. They forgive their enemies and work with people they were trying to kill just years before. They laugh at death, play with destruction, and somehow maintain enough wisdom to avoid ending themselves. The council chamber was completely silent now. Most importantly, Zethkalar concluded, I recommend we pray they never decide we are a problem that needs solving. Because if humans can casually joke about destroying their own civilization while simultaneously risking their lives to save strangers, I cannot predict what they might do to threats from outside their world. The transmission ended with Council Leader Vorthan calling for an emergency session. Within hours, the Galactic Council made an unprecedented decision. Earth would be placed under indefinite observation, but not quarantine. They were too afraid of what humans might do if they felt contained. Years later, humans developed true faster-than-light travel and discovered the Council's existence. They were immediately offered full membership, not because they had proven themselves worthy, but because the Council was too terrified to risk having them as enemies. Ambassador Zethkalar never took another first contact mission. He spent his remaining years in a quiet research facility, trying to understand how chaos and contradiction could produce wisdom and strength. He never found the answer.